Welcome back to the News at 10. The increasing cases of maritime crime in the Gulf of Guinea and West Africa has constituted a big challenge for the federal government and the international community. This is the reason the European Union, in collaboration with the Nigerian government, is training some security agencies in the marine sector on the best ways to combat criminals in the Gulf of Guinea. Speaking at the closing ceremony of the exercise in Calabar, Cross River State, Mr. Eric Lawton and Flag Officer commanding Eastern Naval Command, Rear Admiral Charles Medani, both agree that the training will ensure a secure and stable maritime domain.
Security is a matter for everybody, not only for Nigeria, but also for Europe. We have a part of our goods who are coming from the Gulf of Guinea, and in particular petrol and gas. It's about 7% of the petrol and gas used in Europe, and for us the security in that part of the world is very important. So we endeavor about the Prt3, and we want to support the effort of all the countries and the regional economic community to build stronger response to this insecurity. We do not say that the skill being impacted by the European Union through the critical project is not unwelcome. It's welcome, but it's good to emphasize that there are two things. Skill and assets, they go together. So if you have skill and you don't have assets, you have a problem. If you have assets and you don't have skill, then you know how to use that assets very well. And we believe that the European Union has the capacity to follow up on this skill phase with an asset supplementary phase. They don't necessarily have to provide that to the Nigerian Navy. They could provide that to the police, they could provide that to the customs, or they could provide that to the MP. But the idea is to have enough assets to be able to enforce the various laws and regulations, and then to prevent the criminals from operating.
To education, the West African Examination Council, WAEC, is set to introduce the e-marking system to reduce the financial burden and error in the marking of scripts of over 1.5 million students that usually sit for its examinations yearly. At a forum in Lagos, the Deputy Registrar of WAEC, Dr. Mudupe Oke, explained that a lot of errors occur during manual scoring of students' essays and practical tests.
The logistics involved, the number of days of marking, the movement we use, the money, financial losses, and so on. It was found that there was a wide discrepancy in the scores awarded by the examiners to the same set of students. That was what I was talking about, greater reliability or intra-greater reliability. Similarly, the research department went again to 1999 to determine the character value of the essay papers from the purpose of ensuring that the scores are comparable from one examiner to another. What did we find out? The department found out that there were significant differences in the mean scores awarded by the same examiners upon repeated marking. As of last marking of November, December, as of last year, we had 78 marking venues. So you can imagine the number of staff and other staff and examiners that are involved.
And now we turn our attention to health news. Are you one of those caught up in the case of incorrect diagnosis, non-treatment or improper treatment of typhoid fever? Did you know that the popular test for the diagnosis of the infection is not enough to determine its presence in the body? Well, tonight on our Focus in Health, our correspondent Yomi Otaigbe brings you the facts surrounding typhoid fever, and how you can protect yourself from the illness.
Typhoid fever, a bacterial disease which is common in developing countries but seen worldwide, remains a serious health threat, especially for children. The transmission of this infection is hinged on poor hygiene habits and public sanitation conditions.
Typhoid is caused by bacteria, Salmonella typhoid and Salmonella Prt3. And the bacteria get into the system through the feces. A contaminated feces that enters through the water or food or through the finger, or a fly takes it to food or water and so on. And gets into the mouth and gets into the system.
As simple as this explanation seems, medical practitioners still have to deal with the mistaken belief by some people that every unresolved malaria fever transforms into typhoid.
It's a misconception because though they have similar symptoms, typhoid and malaria, but typhoid is usually more serious, associated with a lot of vomiting, serious headache, fever that is persistent. Unlike malaria, that the fever comes and goes, the fever of typhoid is always persistent, very serious, and may be associated with symptoms, gastric symptoms like vomiting, diarrhea, or even constipation.
For an infection with an estimated 21 million cases worldwide and 216 to 600,000 fatality annually, typhoid fever is a disease that should not be handled with kid gloves.
Well, if typhoid is left untreated, there are a lot of complications that would arise. You could even have perforation of the intestine, you could have hemorrhage, bleeding, and of course after that, death. That is if it is not treated. Over-treatment causes a lot of problems for us because people overuse antibiotics as a result of repeatedly thinking they have typhoid and using antibiotics. And most oftentimes, they use antibiotics in inadequate doses. Therefore, they cause problems in future because then we have bacterial resistance. We got that with malaria treatment because people used to underuse chloroquine, or were using chloroquine when it was not necessary, when they didn't have malaria. And it's the same thing they're doing to OCTs. Without checking that you have malaria, not every fever is malaria, not every fever is typhoid. You need to be checked. You need to do the tests before you know what you're treating, and then you take adequate dosing of the regimen you're giving.
We have a rapid diagnostic test which you can use to differentiate malaria. And if it's not malaria, you may now have high index of suspicion against typhoid. However, sometimes we have to do wider tests. Wider test is not confirmatory for typhoid, but it can give us an idea if the titer is high. We can have an idea that probably the person had typhoid or is having current typhoid. But the definitive diagnostic for typhoid is to do a blood culture or a bone marrow culture.
When it comes to typhoid, ensure that you take safe water and also safe food. Food must be properly prepared in an hygienic manner, and also the water must also be taken the water you take must be pure. In short, it must be purified appropriately. Those that do not have facilities to obtain clean water must ensure that they boil their water before they consume such water.
As the saying goes, prevention is better than cure. But peradventure the typhoid bacteria finds its way into your body system. Proper and prompt treatment will be your best options. Yomi Otaibu reporting for Channels Television News.
The federal government plans to raise 65 billion naira worth of bonds at an auction next week. According to the Debt Management Office, the bill will have maturities of 3 to 20 years. Using the Dutch auction system, the DMO says it will auction 10 billion naira worth of 3-year paper, 30 billion naira of 10-year paper, and 25 billion naira of 20-year paper. The downturn at the equities market continued this week as the all-share index lost 11.54% to close at 33,216.31. Total volume recorded stood at 3.778 billion shares at the value of 26.740 billion naira. Only one stock appreciated during the week, that's Better Glass Company. It added 1 naira 5 kobo to its share price. On the decliners table, 73 equities depreciated during the week, led by Lafarge Africa with 33 naira 15 kobo. It was followed by Dangote Sugar Refinery with 2 naira 3 kobo and the Shaka Cement with 8 naira 97 kobo. A total of 5 billion ordinary shares of 50 kobo each at 55 kobo per share of Omoluabi Savings and Loans were admitted to trade on the exchange. It is listed under the alternative securities market. The U.S. economy added 214,000 jobs in October, while the unemployment rate has fallen to 5.8%. Official Labor Department figures show that the number of jobs created is slightly below forecasts of about 230,000 new posts, but still indicates a healthy U.S. jobs market. The figures are a significant gauge of the health of the economy. U.S. employers have added at least 200,000 jobs for 9 months in a row, the longest growth period since 1995. Jobs figures for August and September were also revised higher. Next on the news at 10. Ghana Football Association set to name former Chelsea boss Avon Grant as new Black Stars handler. That's in sports news. Please stay with us.